For 15 seasons, a woman's womb slept like dry earth. For 15 years, she endured gossip, shame, and loneliness that threatened to bury her spirit. But when her miracle finally came, it shook an entire village and silenced every tongue that mocked her. This is the story of the woman who waited 15 years for one child. In the sun soaked village of Umokoro lived a woman named Oninye, soft in nature, strong in spirit, and beloved by all who knew her. Yet, beneath that gentle smile was a wound so deep no one could see its end. Year after year, season after season, she watched other women cradle their newborns while her own hands remained empty. Every new moon brought hope, and every passing moon crushed it again. Her prayers rose like smoke, her tears fell like rainfall, yet the heavens remained silent. With each season, the whispers around her grew sharper, slicing into her heart. Some say she was cursed, others claimed the gods had sealed her womb. And though she tried to stand tall, her spirit bent like tired branch in the Hamatan wind. As the seasons passed, even her home began to crumble under the weight of disappointment. What once echoed with laughter slowly filled with long silences and strained glances. Her husband, Uche, once patient and loving, began to retreat from her, burdened by shame he could not carry openly. With each year that passed without a child, he drifted further away. Eventually, his absence became permanent. One morning, he walked away from their home, carrying with him the last pieces of hope Onyinye clung to. The emptiness he left behind was louder than any insult the village had ever spoken. Yet, even in her grief, Onyinye did not curse her fate. She simply wept, prayed, and continued to live, though each day felt heavier than the last. One night, in the quiet of her small hut, Onyinye fell to her knees, exhausted from carrying sorrow for so long. She lifted her face towards the dim glow of her clay lamp and let her tears fall without restraint. She cried until her body trembled, until her breath came in short, broken waves. And in that moment, when she released the last of her strength, something shifted within her spirit. A strange calm settled over her, wrapping itself around her like a warm cloth. She could not explain it, but for the first time in many seasons, she felt seen by something greater than her pain. Little did she know, her miracle had already begun. Days later, while tending to her small farm, far from the curious eyes of the village, Onyinye felt the presence of an old woman behind her. No one knew where the woman came from. Her clothes carried the scents of distant lands. Her eyes held stories of many lifetimes. The woman observed Onyinye with a gentle, knowing gaze. She seemed to understand every sorrow Onyinye had endured without hearing a word. After a moment, she handed her a small seed, ordinary in appearance, yet strangely warm to the touch. Onyinye felt a pull toward the wisdom of this stranger. Without questioning the strangeness of the encounter, she carried the seed home and planted it at the foot of a towering Iroko tree, a place of ancient, significant spirituality. 3 rains fell, 3 gentle showers that soaked the earth and cooled the village. And with the third rain came the beginning of something extraordinary. One morning, Onyinye woke up with a pounding dizziness she had never felt before. Her body felt different, alive in a way it hadn't been for 15 seasons. Her steps grew heavy, her appetite changed, and as the weeks passed, her stomach began to rise like a hill under the warm African sun. The villagers stared with wide, unbelieving eyes. A woman barren for 15 years, now swelling with life. Some whispered in awe, some in fear, others in silent jealousy. But Onyinye ignored their stares. She carried her growing belly with pride, grace, and gratitude. When the midwife finally examined her, her hands trembled with shock. She was carrying a child, strong, healthy, and growing fast. The miracle the village believed impossible had come. Months later, the sky darkened with heavy clouds. Lightning cracked through the air, splitting the night into blinding flashes. Onyinye's cries rose through the storm, echoing into the village as the midwife worked tirelessly to bring forth the long awaited child. Hours felt like days. Pain mingled with hope. The storm raged as if the heavens themselves were pushing life into the world. And then a loud cry pierced the night, strong and triumphant. Onyinye had given birth to a baby boy, a child long delayed but not denied. The midwife wept as she lifted the newborn. Outside the hut, the storm calmed suddenly, as though nature itself bowed in respect to the miracle that had just taken place. Word spread through the village like wildfire. People who once mocked Onyinye now revered her. Her story traveled through the village, carried by traders, wandering travelers, and griots who told tales across distant lands. Onyinye named her son Chikamso, God follows me. But truly, after 15 seasons of waiting, a miracle had followed her like a faithful shadow. Women from other villages sought her wisdom. Childless wives came to her for comfort. Families honored her strength and resilience. And the once lonely woman had become a symbol of hope, a reminder that the darkest season is often a prelude to the brightest sunrise. If this story moved your heart, if it reminded you that miracles come in their own time, then don't leave without supporting this channel. Subscribe for more African stories. Like this video to help it reach someone who needs hope. Share it to inspire a friend or a family member. Stay with us. Your next miracle story begins here. There are stories the elders refuse to tell unless the night is deep, the moon is high, and every lamp in the room is burning. Stories about people who didn't just live, but shifted the direction of entire bloodlines. People whose quiet choices, ones they never bragged about, never questioned, became the unseen threads that held whole generations together. One such story is about a farmer's wife. They say 8 mysterious blessings followed her everywhere she went. But they also say these blessings didn't start as blessings. Some of them began as disasters, merciless trials sent to break her. Yet she survived every single one. And in surviving, she changed everything. This is not a story about luck. This is a story about a woman who carried 8 blessings disguised as storms. And if you think you know where this story is going, you don't. Not even close. Before her name became a whisper, people spoke with reverence. She was simply Adora, a farmer's wife living on a quiet stretch of land, tucked behind a line of ancient trees. The land around her was gentle, the kind that rewarded patience. But like every old land, it had a memory, and it was watching her. The first trial arrived without mercy, a drought so severe that the ground cracked open, revealing deep, jagged wounds as if the earth itself were crying out in pain. The village rivers dried to mud, the animals grew thin, the soil refused to obey the hands that worked it. But Adora moved with a quiet determination that unsettled even the elders. Long before the sunrise, she rose, lifted her clay pot, and walked miles, past wilderness shrubs, past abandoned footpaths, until she reached the last stubborn trickle of water in a shrinking stream. Her feet burst into blisters, her legs trembled from exhaustion, her throat burned from the scorching air. But she kept going. She endured the heat, the distance, the loneliness of the empty lands, and the earth took notice. The first blessing settled quietly on her shoulders like an invisible cloak. The drought brought something else, something darker. A neighboring family was starving. While some villagers looked away, Adora saw everything: the hollow eyes of their children, their fading steps, the silent desperation they tried to hide. One evening, she split her last remaining tubers into two halves, even though she knew her own family's food would barely last. She left the other half at the neighbor's doorstep. No words, no witness. Night after night, she did this, risking her own family's survival to support another. And though she told no one, the universe heard. Her compassion became her second blessing. When the rains finally returned, the village celebrated too soon. The relief lasted only a moment because the sky unleashed storms far angrier than any of the elders had predicted. Thunder cracked like the roar of an ancient beast. Flood waters swept through the farms, carrying away seedlings and drowning goats and chickens. Many villagers lost everything. But months before, in the quiet of her home, Adora had sealed precious seeds in carved gourds using a technique passed down from her grandmother. She raised the barn on stilts, a decision her neighbors laughed at until the water came. What she preserved became the hope of her household. Her wisdom, questioned then, praised later, became her third blessing. Test 4 came in the most unexpected way. One violent storm tore up the roof of her home. The wind hurled straw, wood, and belongings across the ground like scattered memories. Rain soaked everything she owned, even the few treasured items she kept from her childhood. Anyone else would have broken, but Adora did not. At sunrise, she stood barefoot on the cold, wet earth, gathered every broken shard, washed what could be restored, dried what could be saved, and released what was lost. Her resilience was not loud, it was steady, it was deep rooted inside her, and it became her fourth blessing. Her husband fell ill, a fever unlike any sickness the village had seen in years. His breathing turned shallow, his skin burned as if fire lived beneath it. Even the healers, wise, steady men, left with grim expressions. But Adora refused to surrender him to the night. She sat beside him for days, refusing sleep. She crushed herbs, cooled his body with wet cloths, and whispered silent prayers into the air, believing the universe was listening. Each night, she placed a small lantern at his bedside, not to light the room, but to hold hope steady. Days later, he opened his eyes. The fever broke. He lived. Her faith became her fifth blessing. Adora never celebrated herself. She never announced her struggle, never boasted about her strength, never listed her sacrifices. She carried her burdens in silence, not the silence of fear, not the silence of oppression, but the silence of a woman who understood that storms don't need witnesses to count, and that healing does not require applause. In a world that praised noise, her silence became a rare and powerful blessing. The sixth. Time passed. Children grew. Grandchildren arrived. Her hands aged, but her teachings, work before reward, kindness before judgment, patience before panic, took roots in the generations that followed. Her family became respected across the villages, not for their wealth, not for their possessions, but for their character. Her grandchildren learned generosity from her. Her great grandchildren learned resilience from her. Her great great grandchildren inherited her quiet strength. Her legacy became her seventh blessing. But the final blessing, the eighth, was waiting in a place no one expected. Decades after Adora died, the land suffered one of the harshest famines in its history. Crops withered, animals died, families starved, panic swept through the villages. Then one day, Adora's granddaughter, searching desperately through the old barn, found something strange. Hidden inside a wooden chest, beneath layers of cloth and dust, were Adora's ancient gods, still sealed, still intact, still full of the seeds she stored decades earlier. Seeds preserved through storms, through time, through loss, through generations. Those seeds, Adora's seeds, became the salvation of the entire region. They replanted the fields, they fed starving families, they revived the land. Only then did the villagers realize the eighth blessing was the one Adora never lived to see, the future she prepared without knowing it. Her life had been a series of storms, but every storm had hidden a blessing. Every blessing planted a seed. Every seed grew into something larger than her existence. She never knew her whispers to the universe would echo through generations. Adora's story is a reminder. Blessings rarely arrived wrapped in comfort. Sometimes they come disguised as scorching heat, or rising waters, or falling roofs, or illness, or silence. Sometimes blessings look like the storms, but if you can survive them, if you endure like Adora did, you don't just change your own life. You change every life that comes after yours. She was a simple farmer's wife, but she carried eight blessings, not because she wanted them, but because she earned them. And the world is forever different because she lived. If this story touched you even for a moment, then keep its message alive by sharing it. And if you want more powerful emotional stories like this, stories that heal, inspire, and stay with you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and turn on your notifications. Thank you for listening. Until the next story, carry your blessings well. They say ancestors protect us, but in this village, there was a secret no one dared to say out loud. Not all ancestors died as humans, and not all of them stayed buried. Every generation, one girl was chosen, not to lead, not to be honored, but to be taken back by the ones that lived beneath the earth. This year, the drums broke their silence at midnight, not for a festival, not for a ritual. They called a single name, the name of a girl who had no idea she had been marked since birth. Because in this village, children weren't born for their families, they were born for the ancestors. And tonight, the ancestors came to collect. The village of Uhamiri sat quietly behind thick forests and windy rivers. From the outside, it appeared peaceful. a place where palm trees whispered and night fires glowed like scattered stars. But beneath that peace lived centuries of unspoken fear. History had carved Uhamiri into a place of obedience. Obedience to tradition, obedience to silence, obedience to the ancestors who walked the world before man remembered himself. Adana, the 19-year-old girl, the drums will soon claim, grew up unaware of the shadows surrounding her birth. She lived simply, unaware that every glance she received, every blessing whispered over her, and every warning disguised as affection had been part of a preparation she never agreed to. She did not know she was born into a debt that the living feared, and the dead never forgot. Months before the drums began, the world around Adana shifted in quiet, unsettling ways. Birds perched on her window in unusual stillness. Children stared at her as if recognizing a face that is not her own. Elders paused mid sentence when she walked by, careful not to meet her gaze. Even the wind seemed to hesitate around her, blowing gently around others, but cutting sharply against her skin. At night, she dreamt of shadowed figures dancing in circles, not joyfully, but in a way that felt like summoning. She woke up with the sense that someone had been standing at the foot of her bed only moments before. Still, she told no one. She believed the strange could be ignored, but the strange wasn't seeking her attention. It was reclaiming her. The first night she heard them, she thought it was thunder, a slow, steady pulse echoing across the night sky. But thunder fades. This did not. Night after night, the beat returned, first distant and muffled, then clearer, deeper, sharper. By the fifth night, it no longer sounded like drums from the forest. It sounded like drums beneath her house, beneath her floor, beneath her skin. The rhythm was not random. It matched her heartbeat. Or perhaps it forced it. And then she realized something horrifying. The drums were not calling someone, they were calling her. Each beat carried a silent message the living could not hear, but her bones understood perfectly. Come. The village changed when the drums chose her. Women whispered behind walls, men walked faster at night, elders avoided the streets altogether, but no one came to warn Adana. They couldn't. That was the rule. You do not interfere with the ancestors' choice. The villagers did what they had always done: turn away, pretend not to see, and praise the chosen one obeys without resistance. Because anyone who refused the drums, anyone who ran, anyone who tried to hide, disappeared. Uhamiri carried many legends, but the darkest were not told to children. They were buried along with the girls who vanished, girls whose names were never spoken again. And now the people watched Adana, waiting for the ancestors to collect what was theirs. On the seventh night, the drums struck differently. It wasn't music, it was command. The air trembled, the ground quivered, even the moon seemed to dim. Adana woke instantly, breath thin, heart caught between beats. The drums were not outside anymore. They were inside her walls, her ceiling, her very bloodstream. She rose as though pulled by invisible strings. Her feet moved without her will. Her eyes burned with a knowing she did not want. When she stepped outside, the entire village was frozen, breath held, doors shut, windows locked, but no one slept. Everyone heard nothing, yet everyone knew. The chosen one had finally answered. A narrow path of faint silver light stretched from her home to the forbidden forest, and Adana followed, not out of courage, but out of inevitability. The forest was not like it appeared in daylight. The trees leaned inward, forming a tunnel of twisted branches. The air thickened with an ancient heaviness, as if every breath she took belonged to someone else first. The deeper she walked, the louder the drums grew, not above, not around, but below, as though the earth itself was beating. Shadows shifted without wind. Animals stayed silent. The night felt alive, watching, waiting. At the end of the path, the forest opened into a vast clearing, and there they were. Massive drums arranged in a perfect circle, their surfaces marked with symbols that glowed like burning embers. No human hand touched them, yet they thundered in violent unison. In the center of the circle stood a strange stone, tall, black, ancient, stained with layers of offerings, older than the village itself. And as Adana stepped closer, the drums stopped. The silence was louder than any sound she ever heard. The ground beneath her warmed, the air hummed, the stone pulsed like a living heart. Memories she had never lived surged through her. Visions of a girl who had her face but not her soul. A girl who had walked this same path centuries ago. A girl who had willingly offered herself to the ancestors to protect the village from something far worse. The girl had been the first keeper, a guardian who stood between the living and the restless dead. The ancestors were not calling Adana to destroy her. They were calling her to awaken what she had once been. The chosen one was not a victim, she was a replacement. And the promise sealed generations ago, the one the village had to bury, had finally come due. Adana's soul was simply returning to its original owner. She had been born marked, born claimed, born bound to a duty no one warned her about. The drums resumed, slower now, rhythmic, deliberate. The stone opened, not like a door, but like a mouth. Light poured out, golden and violent, pulling her inward. And in that moment, she understood. She was not being taken, she was being restored. When the light consumed her, the forest bowed, the drums quieted, the earth settled. By the time dawn approached, the clearing was empty, but the village felt like the shift, a deep ancestral exhale. Adana was gone, but the keeper had returned. The ancestors would sleep again for now. If you like this story, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another myth, mystery, or chilling tale from the other side. And tell me in the comments, should I continue the keeper story